Hello, this is Mr. Quinn. From here on out, I'm going to be recording the PowerPoint so you can watch them as videos. Today's lesson will be on visual design elements and principles. First, the eight design elements that we use are point, line, color, value, shape, form, space, and texture. Point is the most basic element of design. It has a position, but no dimension. It can be described by coordinates on a plane, such as this one, which in the XYZ coordinate is -2, 2, 3. Those are the XYZ coordinates of this point. And point can be used to indicate where something is located. You can see this is located, all the little joints in this particular animation of a runner. Line has only a length dimension. Line can be used to define a boundary, can be indicate volume or show perspective. You'll see at the bottom of the right, Escher's. This is one of Escher's drawings. Escher plays a lot with perspective, and I really like a lot of Escher's work. Lines can create perspective and depth. They can create textures and patterns, as you see this image at the top of the wavy piano. And at the bottom left, they can also be used to suggest movement. When you see the road, it kind of shows movement. It almost looks like you're driving down the road. But line can also be used to imply emotion. Lines can be four different types. They can be vertical, horizontal, diagonal, and curved. Vertical lines, like you see here on these baseball jerseys, they show dignity, formality, stability, strength. The same when you look at the Empire State Building, very tall buildings, or the skyscraper shown in Spain. Horizontal lines tend to represent calm, peace, and relaxation, such as this church or this building that was designed by Frank Lloyd Wright. You can see with the river flowing underneath it, it just makes you feel like you're on vacation, makes you want to relax. Diagonal lines, such as the ones that you see here, show sense of movement, action, and activity. Some of my favorite buildings is this one at the bottom right. This is an apartment building designed by the architect Hundertwasser, and his buildings are wild. He had some crazy ideas, like he wanted to go ahead and put urinals right on the wall in the living room instead of putting them in the bathroom, which obviously the city wouldn't allow you to. The code won't allow you to do that. But he definitely was very avant-garde. You can see the buildings don't look like they're structural; they look wacky. But definitely looks very Dr. Seussian. It definitely looks very neat. Diagonal lines. Curved lines give a sense of freedom and provide a soothing mood. Like you can see this W building, which is in Asia. Okay, the Sydney Opera House in Sydney, Australia. Color can be described by three different things. Hue is the base color. For example, the colors of the rainbow, Roy G. Biv. Value shows how light or dark a color is. Saturation shows the purity or intensity of color relative to gray. So if it's very saturated, then it's very bright color, and if it's not so saturated, then it's kind of more grayer type of color. There are two temperature or color temperatures. Cool colors tend to be ones associated with winter or ice. Blue, okay, green, okay, purple. Warmer colors tend to be those associated with fire. Red, orange, yellow. A color can have an immediate and profound impact on a design. If we look at this image right here, we see this green jumping out on us. The green leaf makes it almost, and you see the green car kind of implies that it's environmental. It's going to be an environmentally friendly vehicle. Value is the relative lightness or darkness of a color, object, or shape. For example, these three rubber ducks at the top right, they're the exact same image, but some are darker than others, so they're showing different value. Value allows us to take things that are two-dimensional, like pencil on paper, and make them look 3D, such as this drawing at the bottom right. The dark, very dark area at the top right of the image showing underneath the taxi's foot, the taxi driver's foot, shows us that it's three-dimensional. Shape is a two-dimensional area enclosed or surrounded by lines and curves. Shapes can be geometric, things like squares, stars, rectangles, like you see here. Shapes can also be mechanical, like these gears that you see in the bottom and the center, or organic shapes are things that you would expect to see in nature. These are things that look like these leaves that you see at the bottom right. Take a look at this barracuda image here. Would you say it looks more geometric or more mechanical or more organic? Um, you might have said one or more of those. You could argue that it's geometric because we can see there's some circles in it. Okay, we can see some triangles. We can see some lines. You could even argue that some of it looks mechanical as well. Definitely looks organic. It almost looks like a shape of a mouse or a rat or a rodent or something like that. So this particular object, you could argue, is any of those different types of shapes. Form is something that's three-dimensional volume or a solid. It's often implied on a 2D surface by using value. See, we're using a 2D medium in all three of these images here, and you can see the shadows makes it appear to be 3D. Here are some examples of form. You can see the Pearl Tower in Shanghai, or even the ancient Egyptian pyramids. Again, these are three-dimensional structures. Space can be the area between and around parts of an image or the depth in that image. And it can be described as either positive space or negative space. At the bottom right, you can see the center, that sphere is there, so it's being used. So that's what we call positive space. At the bottom left, in the center of the image, there's nothing there. It's an absence of anything, that gray spot. It looks like something's missing. That's what we would call negative space. If we take a look at this this image at the bottom left now with all the people, you can see both positive space where the people are sitting, and then there's negative space, kind of blank space in between the diners that it's not being used. Traditionally in magazines, they would talk about white space as being unused space, because traditionally magazines were always put on white paper. Okay, so white space would be similar to negative space. It's the space that's not being used. Take a look at this image right here. Do you see an open, uncluttered space, or does it look cramped and busy? This is obviously in Venice, in Italy. How about this image here? Does this look open and uncluttered, or does it look cramped and busy? You could probably argue it either way. Texture is the look or feel of a surface. Texture can be smooth. Okay, smooth surfaces reflect more light and show you more color. Rough surfaces absorb more light and also appear darker. This image of a concert hall in Los Angeles is a smooth texture. It's reflecting the light. At the bottom right, this is a rough texture. This is a structure built and designed by Gaudí, the architect, in Spain. You can see it looks very rough, natural. Look like you can see the rough stone. Okay, rough stones are almost jutting out of the columns. At the top right, you can see this is showing us a fluffy texture. It makes you want to feel warm and soft. All right, so that was the elements of design. Now we're going to focus on the principles of design. The principles include balance, emphasis, contrast, rhythm, proportion, unity, as well as economy. Balance can refer to either visual balance and also to physical balance. Balance refers to the distribution of the elements within a design. Balance could be symmetrical or formal, asymmetrical, which is also called informal, and it can also be radial balance. You'll see three images right here of formal balance. Okay, the left and right side of all three of these images look like they're similar weight of all on the at the top left in those bushes. All right, and as well as the bottom in the center. All right, the person's left and right side of the vegetable face look similar. Same with the Taj Mahal in Italy. Okay, they're identical in visual weight in relation to a center line. In this case, the center lines are left to right. This image shows asymmetrical or informal balance. The elements within the design aren't identical, but they're arranged to provide weight. Okay, on the left, that image on the left-hand side, there's a ball on the left, and then there's a little star shape on the right. There, so you see one object on the left and the other one on the right. The image at the bottom right is in Red Square, okay, in Moscow. These are two very different images, or two different buildings, inside Red Square. At the left there, with the onion-shaped cupolas, is a cathedral, but then at the right, there's a taller building, narrower building. So these images are not identical on the left and right, but they're still fairly well balanced, because there's one on the left is shorter and wider, and the one on the right is taller and thinner. These images that you see here demonstrate radial balance. It has a circular pattern around a center point, such as the wheel on the left-hand side, or this is a cupola inside a church in Germany. Emphasis is where we use to draw attention to one area. Okay, the focal point is what your eye gets attracted to. And you can achieve focal point or emphasis using a size, placement, shape, contrast, or the use of lines. If you look at the image on the left-hand side, okay, what does your eye drawn to? Okay, some people would say that it's drawn to the shape on the ceiling, because the color helps it stick out. Others would say that their eye is drawn to the person that they see, because we tend to look for people in images. But if you look at the person, you want to see what are they looking at, and that wants to go ahead and get you to go look up at the image. So either way, you're going to eventually end up looking at the image on the ceiling. At the bottom right, if you look at the emphasis of that, okay, you could say initially that your eye's drawn, or some might say that the eye's initially drawn to the bright yellow, but then all of a sudden you see the person there walking along the tightrope, the contrast. So they're definitely using contrast in this case to demonstrate the emphasis. What are they using here in this image to demonstrate emphasis? Yes, it's clearly that bright red, okay, on the seatbelt, obviously for safety, because if it's dark, right, if there's a danger and you need to be able to get out of a car, you need to be able to find the seatbelt button. So they make it a bright red so that it contrasts with the rest of the car. These images right here show contrast. On the bottom left, okay, you'll see the uh, red rectangular prism contrasts with the three green ones. At the top right, you definitely see a contrast, the earthy tones of the smaller building and the brighter, taller tones of the skyscraper. Even at the bottom right, these are beautiful scene in a park, but very different contrasting colors. There's red bushes and trees as well as green ones. Contrast can be used to emphasize an element. You can see in this taxi project image here, they're using yellow to demonstrate what? They're using yellow to demonstrate where the people are going to be, where the people fit in. Rhythm is the repeated use of lines, shapes, color, texture, or patterns. It can be a harmonious pattern or sequence. Rhythms can be regular, random, gradated, as well as graduated. These two images show regular rhythm, where the element is repeated at the same interval at the same time. It's likely that you have a repeated rhythm in tiles that you might have in, let's say, your bathroom or your kitchen at your home. Okay, people tend to use regular rhythm in those types of environments. You can even see these buildings at the bottom right. You see a regular repeated rhythm. These two images show a random rhythm. The cathedral in Red Square at the right. Okay, you can see those onion-shaped cupolas. They're very different colors, very different shapes. So the same onion-shaped cupola is repeated throughout it, but they're different. They're different colors and different shapes, different sizes. On the left-hand side as well, what looks like pieces of cement kind of hanging through a fence or something like that. It's repeated, okay, pieces of cement or rocks at random or regular intervals. So this is what we call random rhythm. Gradated rhythm um, uh, is something where something is repeated, but one detail makes it increase or decrease. So on the left, you can see these types of rocks that tend to stack. Very often, you might see these on graves of in a Jewish cemetery. They tend to put stones on a grave, and sometimes they'll stack them. In the center, there's what we call matryoshki, or these are stacking dolls, which was a traditional Russian toy, a Russian doll, where one would fit inside the other. Um, when I was in Eastern Europe back in the '90s, they had stacking dolls that had all sorts of political figures. There was, Clinton and Bush and Reagan, okay, Boris Yeltsin, Gorbachev. These names that you probably know from your history class. So they're not always these old babushkas, the old grandmothers. Sometimes they'll use different types of shapes or images. On the right hand side, this is like an Asian pavilion where you can see it's getting smaller and smaller as it gets higher. This is what we call a gradated rhythm. A graduated rhythm is it where a repeated element becomes either closer or farther apart. So initially your eye is drawn to the model here on the right hand side, okay? But if you look outside and around her, you can see real close to her, it's very open. You don't see a lot of these little bubbles or spheres. And then as you get farther away, the bubbles and bubbles get get larger and also get closer together. And you see a lot less white space as you get farther. This is what we call graduated rhythm. Proportion is the comparative relationship between elements in a design with respect to size. At this image at the top right, you can see a weather vane on the left. The weather vane looks huge, and yet the person on the right looks really small. So you can definitely see the proportion looks weird. It looks strange. They're obviously trying to pull that out of us. Scale is the proportion or size of an element in relation to the other elements. What you see at the bottom right is an image of Washington, D.C. You see the Capitol, okay, way in the distance, the Washington Monument, very, very tall and thin, and yet the Lincoln Memorial, short and wider on the left-hand side. Unity is a consistent use of design elements. You can see this image at the bottom left. It looks like a college campus. They tend to have all those red brick buildings. They all tend to match. Okay, definitely shows unity. Everything's consistent. At the top right, you'll see this park where all these bushes are similar types of shape. At the bottom right, these matryoshka or stacking dolls look very similar. You see a lot of similar themes. Okay, older folks, older women. It looks like somebody with the equivalent of Santa Claus, St. Nicholas. But again, a lot of red colors, similar consistent colors and patterns. A lot of flowers. Economy is the use of the bare minimum of elements. If we look at this image at the right, we see a fuel tank and somebody put a post-it that has a little low on, and it looks like we're almost on empty, almost like they're trying to demonstrate economy. This is a vehicle that can go on very little fuel. Economy can be achieved by removing extra or extraneous elements, things you don't need. The concept of economy says that in simplicity there's beauty. The less is more. Here you can see some economy in this particular vehicle here. They've left out a lot of many of the walls of the car. Okay, but it kind of looks real cool, right? At the top, a very simple car, looks very small. Definitely showing economy. A visual design matrix can help you analyze the visual characteristics of an object and identify how those visual elements and principles of a design are used. For example, let's say we look at a soap dish. This right here. Now we're looking at a soap dish. First, identify the elements of a design. For instance, the shapes used are geometric, rectangular, as well as circular. Once the elements of a design are identified, you can determine how they demonstrate the principles of a design. We have curved top edge that contrasts with straight edges on the sides. You also see a regular rhythm created by the repeated use of circular holes. In activity 6.1, you're not going to have to do a visual design principles and elements matrix like this. All right, thank you very much. Take care.